How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss, read by Mr. Swider's 4th grade reading class.
Every who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch who lived just north of Whoville did not. The Grinch hated Christmas the whole Christmas season. Now please don't ask why no one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was too small. Whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Who's, staring down from his cave with a sore Grinchy frown at the warm light windows below in their town, for he knew every who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath, and there hanging their stockings. He snarled with a sneer, "Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here." Then he growled with his Grinch fingers, nervously drumming, "I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming." For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys, and then, oh, the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated, the noise, 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 noise. Then the Who's young and old would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare roast beef, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Who's would start singing. They'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing, 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 sing.
And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, "I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how?" Then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. "I know just what to do," the Grinch laughed in his throat. He made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat, and he chuckled and cluckled. "What a great Grinchy trick! With this coat and hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer." The Grinch looked around, but since the reindeer are scarce, there are none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No! The Grinch simply said, "If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead." So he called his dog Max. Then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, "Giddy up!" and the sleigh started down towards the homes where the Who's lay snoozed in their town. All the windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were dreaming sweet dreams without care. He came to the first little house on the square. "This is stop number 1, the old Grinchy Claus hissed. And he climbed down the roof and empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather quaint pinch. But if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch.
He got stuck only once for a moment or two. Then he got with his head out of the fireplace he flew, where little Who's stockings all hung in a row. These stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk with a smile unpleasant around the whole room. He took every present, popguns and bicycles, roller skates and drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorns, and plums, and he stuffed them in the bags Then the Grinch, very nimble, stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimney. Then he slunk in the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who's pudding. He took the Who's roast beef. He cleaned the icebox, quick as a flash. Why, the Grinch even took their last Who hash. He stuffed the food with the chimney with glee, and now grinned the Grinch, all stuffed up the tree. He grabbed the tree and started to shove when he heard a small coo of a dove. He turned around fast. A small Who, little Cindy Lou Who, was not more than 2. The Grinch had caught her with a 2 daughter who had got out of bed with a cold cup of water. He stared at the Grinch. Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? But that old Grinch was too smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and it had to be quick. Why, my Speedy of a Todd, why, my fake Santa Claus lied. There is the light of the tree, and it won't be on one side, so I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there. Then I'll bring it back here. And he fibbed and fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got a drink and sent her to bed.
And when Cindy Lou went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log off their fire. Then he went up to the chimney himself, the old liar. Under walls he left nothing but some hooks and some wires, and the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to all the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still snooze, and he packed up his sled, packed it up with their presents, their ribbons, their wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings, 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet. He rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Boo-hoo to the woos, he was grinchiously humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up, now I know what they'll do. Their mouths will hang out a minute or 2. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, I simply must hear.
So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow, but he wasn't sad. This sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so merry. But why was it merry? Very. It couldn't be so. But it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was rising without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came, somehow or other. It came just the same. The Grinch, with his grinchy feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours, till the puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas perhaps means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel so quite tight. He weaseled with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast, and he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beef.